All right, we're going to take a look at an FRQ about Josephine and Crystal, and they have a local arcade and they get points, and we have two discrete probability models, one for Josephine and one for Crystal. And part A says calculate the expected score. Now, expected value, as soon as you see these rectangle problems, you know from the formula chart the expected value for discrete random variables, that first row right there are the rectangle problems. There is the mean expected value and there is the standard deviation. So this is where we're going to take each one of the x's, multiply it by their probabilities, and sigma, remember, means to add them up. Okay, so to get full credit for Josephine, now the first thing that I would prefer to see is mu sub j equals, I need a symbol, all right, x. The work is shown, multiply 16 times 0.1 plus 17 times 0.3 and so on. So the work, the setup is shown, and the answer is 17.7 for Josephine. For Crystal, mu sub Crystal. All right, I like having the words Josephine and Crystal there, but what are we calculating is mu. If you wanted to use expected value for Josephine or expected value for Crystal, you certainly could, but you still have to have something. Work showing multiplying and adding, and then the answer for Crystal ends up also being 17.7. And so this one is worth 6 points right here. Okay, symbols are necessary. So my person got 4 out of 6. Do not round anything. The only time you're going to round in AP Stats is when you calculate a sample size. So don't round anything. All right. So for part B, it says list all combinations of scores for Josephine and Crystal that will produce a difference of -1, and then calculate the probability of those happening. Okay, so there are 3 different ways, and so your first point right here is, do you have a list? Now you can do it in column headings. You can do Josephine, Crystal, and you can do 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. But there needs to be some kind of listing process where the AP can see what all the different combos, and that's going to be your first check. Do you have a list of all the combos? The next thing you have to have is the calculations for the probabilities of each one of those combinations being done. And there needs to be a formula, okay? So this is the same thing. I know it's not written here. For example, this one right here is the probability that Josephine gets 16 points and Crystal gets 17 points. And remember, if they're independent, which they are, all you're going to do is for and multiply the probabilities together. All right? So I would love to have that labeled for each one, but because of it's next door to the actual combo, I think we're good to go there. And so for this problem, do you have the work for each one of the probability calculations? And then look at your answers. The answers must be right too. For Josephine and Crystal, 16 and 17 is 0.045. Josephine and Crystal, 17 and 18 respectively is 0.12, and the last is 0.06. Check. All right. So you need to make sure you have your list, your calculations, and your work shown, plus the actual answers for those probabilities to get the 3 points for this particular section. So my person has 3 out of 3. They're doing pretty well on this particular problem. All right, so now moving on to part C. Okay, now part C says find the probability that the difference of their scores is -1. Well, we just found out the 3 different ways that happens. So what I'm going to do is there's one more thing I'm going to add right here. All right, this is the probability of Josephine minus Crystal is equal to -1 equals. So I'm not going to give credit. This answer, this probability is sort of naked, and so I'm not going to give credit for having some kind of like P of kind of scenario going on. If you did this in words, you can give yourself a point. In this case, there's nothing, so they don't get a point. And then the work, the 3 probabilities you calculated for B, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. If you added the 3 answers for B together and you've shown your work, you are going to get credit for the answer for part C. So even if you mess up B, you still can get full credit for part C. So for my person, they got 2 out of 3. And the last part right here is a whole distribution of differences between Josephine and Crystal's score. So the first things that we're going to take a look at is, have you filled in the table? The -1, whatever that is, should be your answer for part C. So give yourself a check if you knew that that was 0.225. And then, all right, to get the other one that's missing, all you're going to take is 1 and subtract all the other numbers to get the leftovers, right? Because you know all the probabilities have to add up to 1. So once you have all the other ones, negative 1 we just found out, and that's going to give us 0.085. Second check. All right, so those are the first 2 checks for part D. And then we have now completed the table, and now we're going to calculate the probability that Crystal's score is higher. So Crystal is going to have a higher score. All right, if Crystal has a higher score, that means Josephine minus Crystal. That means you're going to end up getting a negative difference. And that will point you toward what numbers you need to add up. So we're going to be adding up the numbers, okay, where the difference is negative. So we're going to take 0.015 plus 0.085 plus 0.225. There needs to be work shown. The order doesn't matter. And then the final answer, which is worth a check, is going to be 0.325. And that means for part D, there are 4 different check marks right here. Okay. My person has all 4. All right, 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 9 is 16. So this one is probably the most, because it seemed like a longer problem. I bet this would take about 15 minutes to do. Let's see, what did my person get? They got -2 right there, -1, -3. My person got 13 out of 16, so I'm going to put that at the top. And we have now finished our last FRQ grading for topic number 4.